Good evening, appreciated guests, and welcome to my rubbish speech. Although, strictly speaking, being rubbish about rubbish is definitely not what I am. In fact, I'd even go as far as to say that I'm somewhat passionately, if rather nerdily, obsessed by rubbish. Here's a stinky statistic for you. Every year, the UK chucks out around 57 million tonnes of household waste. We are running out of landfill, and no, incineration is not the answer. The core problem, of course, is consumerism. This is our kitchen bin. You may be thinking it's quite small. In fact, it's the only landfill bin we have in the whole house, and there's not very much in it. Every 2 weeks, when the wheelie bins go out, I'm astounded by how much rubbish some people have. Some of the bins are overflowing, and I think, what on earth do people put in there? Granted, there are mostly just 2 of us in the house now, but our wheelie bin hasn't been out for over 4.5 years. Now, there are 3 main reasons for this. Firstly, we are very poor consumers. Secondly, we have very good systems in place. And thirdly, we feel that our waste is our responsibility, so we want to keep it to a minimum, and that helps us to reduce our carbon footprint as well. Luckily, where we live, we do have pretty good recycling facilities. Collections even include food waste, but for us, that means non-compostable, non-edible food. We do not throw away any food that could have been eaten. Although I have to say, we do sometimes have some slightly peculiar meals. Before our council collected foil, I used to save mine until I saw my friend who lived in Wiltshire, and then we'd do a swap, and I would take his plastic bottles, because at the time his council didn't collect those. Driving back through France, I brought back anything I couldn't recycle there, and it was a fairly interesting conversation with customs. But my point is, if you want to do it, it can be done. We keep a small lidded box outside the front door, and into that we'll put things like light bulbs and scrap metal. And once it's full and we're going past, we'll drop it off at one of the recycling centres. So we think it's quite easy. What does go in our bin? Well, you lucky people, I used to show people, but it's got to the point really now where there's nothing going in there. So it's more a point of telling you the sorts of things that we don't. And one of the really important things to note is that we don't use a liner or a bin at all, because there's nothing wet, smelly or disgusting going in that bin. And the beauty of the loose rubbish means that I can don a pair of gloves and I can go back through the recycling. And I can fish out things such as old toothpaste tubes and crisp packets. Now, originally, I did some research. I decided, well, what are the sort of things going in my bin? And this is really annoying, these sort of regular imposters. So I decided to do some research, and I decided to make my own products. And that meant that I could no longer have to put those in. But with my gloves on and the rubbish is loose, I can go back through and I can take them out and recycle them, because you can now take those to TerraCycle. So where most people are actually putting things in their bin, I'm taking them out. Yeah, it's easier really to show you things that don't go in there, like these sponges. Very cheap, aren't they? And you use them, they get a bit pongy, and then you lob them away. But I don't like doing that, so my alternative is a loofah. It's a natural material, and so it's more hygienic. And then this loop just hangs on the tap, and it dries. Now, when this gets a bit tatty, instead of chucking it away, I think, that cost me £2.50. I'm going to keep using it a bit longer. And I will really use it and use it and use it. And my point really is that the more we spend on something, the more we probably value it. And therefore, we get the most out of it. And of course, this can just be composted at end of life. For the gorier side of life, because we have wool carpets and wooden floors, the entire contents of the Hoover can go straight into the compost, along with any hair, toenail, fingernail clippings, all those beauties. And the dustpan and brush, those sorts of bits that go in there. If you cannot compost, perhaps find a friend or a neighbour who does, because once you start, you never have enough. For your periods, invest in a moon cup or some period pants, because in their lifetime, the average woman will use over 11,000 tampons or sanitary towels, and these end up in incineration, landfill, or the sea. And for those of you with babies, I implore you to employ reusable nappies. People say they're more expensive, but you can get grants, you can buy them second-hand, or you can ask those well-meaning friends and family to buy something that your baby actually needs, as opposed to all that plastic tat that they really don't. Toddlers in reusable nappies tend also to come out of nappies to be potty trained a lot quicker. So in the end, you will be saving time, money, hassle, and the planet. It is, after all, your children's future that we are trying to protect. Now, people often laugh when I offer to show them my scrap metal stash. Yes, every broken paperclip and staple is gathered here for recycling. I am that sad. Yet, if every UK office worker saved just one staple a day, there would be over 100 tonnes of metal at the end of the year, which A, shows how the little things add up, and B, if you really want to reduce your waste, you're going to have to stop putting everything in your bin. Once I decide to turn my back on a product, I no longer compare prices. The loofah is a little bit more expensive, but I can afford that if I'm no longer buying products B, C, D, E, F that I don't actually need. Now let's talk about plastics. I hear a lot about how governments and manufacturers should be doing more, and whilst this may well be true, unfortunately, we don't yet have a green government. But we do all have choices. Wherever humanly possible, we try to do without plastic. We don't buy cling film, face wipes, plastic bottles. We are plastic bottle free in our house now. We don't buy any food, any drinks, any toiletries, or any cleaners in plastic bottles. It wasn't that easy, but we have managed it. Some plastics can now go to supermarket collection points, sort of magazine wrappers and bread bags, those sorts of things. But it's much better not to have them in the first place. Shopping bags. These are really page one, like the reusable water bottle. Now, the Bags for Life can be reused. They aren't always. They can be reused and they'll be recycled. But you are still supporting the plastics industry. Whereas these, made of cotton, linen, hemp, those sorts of materials, you've got one on your chair tonight, so you can take one home with you if you need. These are much more important because we can use them a zillion times, and at end of life, they can just be biodegradable. We have seasonal veg from a local grower. And there's no packaging. It comes in a canvas bag, which we reuse the following week. So support your box schemes and your local greengrocers and markets, and buy the loose veg in the supermarkets. And if the supermarkets are still putting things in unnecessary packaging, then go and confront the store manager. Best of all, go and grow your own, because there's no packaging at all and zero or very few food miles. When I go shopping, I take my bags. I also take lots of pots, and I go to the loose food shop or the deli counter or the independent shops. And that way is another brilliant way to really reduce your packaging, and a reason why we should be supporting that sort of shopping. I even take my Tupperware to the takeaway. Now, the first time I did this, they thought I was really odd. The second time, they said to me, "I wish more people would do this." And they gave me some free chips. The aluminium foil that you get from takeaways, yes, you can recycle it, but actually foil isn't that great for the environment either. And the lids are plastic coated, so there are issues with those as well. Sometimes now they give you little plastic boxes and you can reuse them a few times, but they're fairly flimsy. Whereas a second-hand one of these will last you for years. And the point here is to reuse, reuse, reuse. It's much better than recycling. That should be the last straw, as it were. And that brings me neatly onto the point that people think or assume that because we have no landfill, we must have loads of recycling. It must be coming out of our ears. We must be brilliant at it. But actually, we're not very good at that either. Our bin could go out 26 times a year, and it probably goes out 5 or 6 times. Because we give our egg boxes back to the supplier or friends with chickens for reuse. Jars, they can be collected and given to people who make jams and chutneys or given to the WI. Jars, the same sort of thing. And bottles, they're sent for community apple juicing. Toilet roll holders, these can be composted along with scraps of cardboard. And download the form from the Royal Mail and ask them to stop sending you junk. You can't just put a sign there, you have to download, sign a form. Yes, it can be recycled, but think about the ink and the paper and the energy and the time. And once it's recycled, that still takes more energy and time and transport. And best of all, I don't know what I'm supposed to be buying. I don't have to see any of this awful advertising. I don't know what I'm missing. When I worked for a technology company, I massively reduced their waste as well and saved them a fortune. So the sorts of things that I'm doing at home can also be incorporated into many businesses too. I believe that people who do their food shopping more often actually waste less food. It means you're more likely to be able to carry your shopping. Then you can cancel that expensive subscription to the gym because you'll have done your weights and your exercise and you'll have saved a car journey too, perhaps. Modern shopping is all about filling up the car, filling up the fridge. You buy it all at the same time, it all goes off at the same time. You don't know what's lurking at the back of your fridge. No wonder we have so much food waste. But buying little and often means that you only buy what you need and you can buy it a lot fresher as well. Now, people will say to me, what do you do with ... And I'll probably say, well, they probably don't, or I've found an alternative. The thing is, I think very carefully about every item that's coming into our home. What's going to happen to it when I don't want it anymore? Where's it going to end up? Now, occasionally I will have to go and buy something. And if I do, I try to buy it locally rather than online. This way, I'm supporting an independent, the money stays in the local economy, and there's almost certainly going to be less packaging. It might be a couple of quid cheaper in one of the chains, but not necessarily. In fact, we try not to support the chains. We try to avoid brands, the chains, the big companies, because they hoover up all the choice, putting the smaller retails out of business, and pushing all that money into ever larger, increasing global corporations. Now, personally, I think they've already got enough power, and my little bit of power, I want to decide where that goes. It's the same with online. People say, well, I get so much packaging online, but you don't if you don't buy things online. So that's one way of doing it. And also, we have to think about all those van drops, all those miles. But inevitably, we all end up with some packaging. So join a free cycle group or Facebook, or find somebody who's moving house, because you will find somebody that can reuse that packaging. And if I'm sent something in a Jiffy bag, then I'll send it to you, and you can send it to you, and you can send it to you. And this Jiffy bag can keep going round on a massive loop, lovely circular loop. And reuse, reuse, reuse before end of life, recycle. Buying second-hand is really good as well. You'll have a lot less packaging that way. And if you've got gadgets, toys, tools, those sorts of things that are broken, do consider some of our brilliant repair cafes first. No matter where you live, Nobody wants a landfill near them, smelling putrid and contaminating the air and land, yet each and every one of us is responsible every time we chuck something away. And as for those incinerators, well, at least I get a small glow knowing that I will not be fueling them. But I'm not telling you to do any of this. I'm just showing you what can be done if you so wish. If one person this evening takes one idea away and implements it, the world will be a better place. Talk to your friends and family. Have fun with it. Be competitive. See who can reduce their waste the most. Take your bins away and see what happens. At this point, I normally take questions, and whether it's about cat litter, plastics, coffee pods or pens, there are nearly always alternatives. One of the most powerful things you can do is actually think about whether you really need that item, and you can say no. Collectively, we can make a difference. I do hope that I've inspired you this evening to be a little less rubbish about your own rubbish. And please remember, if you ever want anyone to talk rubbish, you know who to ask.